Prince Harry desperate to be seen with King Charles, but what is really happening? There was a time when Prince Harry and King Charles could barely speak without the shadow of a family crisis hanging over them. Now, something very different appears to be happening. Behind closed doors, the relationship between father and son may be entering one of its most important chapters in years. And according to a new report published on August 13th, Prince Harry is allegedly desperate to be seen alongside his father, King Charles. But that headline only tells part of the story. Because Harry's reported desire to be closer to the king comes after a private meeting that could have changed the direction of their relationship, and at a moment when the Sussexes are once again looking toward Britain. So why does Harry appear so determined to rebuild this relationship? Why is being seen with his father potentially so important? And could this developing reconciliation eventually force the wider royal family to confront the much bigger question of Harry's place within the family? Tonight, we take a closer look. The meeting that changed the conversation on July 10, 2026, something happened that would have seemed extremely difficult to imagine only a few years earlier. Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet met King Charles and Queen Camilla at Highgrove. The meeting was private. There was no dramatic palace photograph. No public statement revealing what was discussed. And, importantly, there was an understanding that the details of the conversation would remain private. But despite the lack of public information, the meeting itself was significant. For Meghan and the children, it was reportedly their first face-to-face meeting with King Charles since 2022. And for Harry, it represented something even more personal. A chance to sit with his father away from cameras, headlines on the enormous pressure that has surrounded their relationship for years. Reports afterwards suggested that Harry was left feeling extremely positive about the encounter. One report described him as buoyed and energized by the meeting. And now, 1 month later, the story has taken another turn. Reports suggest Harry remains determined to continue rebuilding the relationship. Not simply with occasional contact, but with more meetings, more time in Britain, and, most importantly, more opportunities for his children to spend time with their grandfather. That changes the meaning of the story. Because this is no longer simply about Harry visiting his father. It is potentially about rebuilding a family relationship that has been damaged for years. Why the word desperate matters. The headline describing Harry as desperate to be seen with King Charles is certainly provocative. But there is an important distinction. There is no publicly established evidence proving that Harry himself has described his position in those terms. The stronger evidence points instead toward a reported determination to repair the relationship. That distinction matters. Because the reality may be more complicated than the headline suggests. Harry does not necessarily need a photograph with his father. What he appears to want is something deeper, a relationship, a sense of family, and perhaps, most importantly, a connection between his children and their grandfather. According to recent reporting, Harry wants further meetings with Charles so Archie and Lilibet can spend more face-to-face time with the king. That is a very different picture from the idea of simply seeking publicity. And yet, the question of visibility cannot be completely ignored. For years, Harry and the royal family have existed in two very different public worlds. Harry has built a new life in California. The king has continued his role at the center of the British monarchy. Every meeting between them therefore carries symbolic weight. A photograph of father and son standing together would mean far more than a simple family picture. It would send a message. Perhaps even an unmistakable one. That the door between them is no longer completely closed. The private rule that could decide everything, but there is one condition that appears to be absolutely crucial. Privacy. The July meeting at Highgrove was reportedly surrounded by an understanding that what happened behind closed doors would stay there. That may sound simple, but in the history of the Sussexes and the royal family, it is anything but simple. Trust has become one of the central issues surrounding the possibility of reconciliation. According to recent reporting, Harry is determined to repair the relationship and does not want to do anything that could jeopardize its progress. And this may explain why the latest reports are so significant. If Harry truly wants more contact with his father, then the path forward may depend less on dramatic public gestures and more on what happens when the cameras are gone. No interviews. No public revelations. No details about private conversations. Just family. That is potentially the formula King Charles needs if he is going to feel comfortable opening the door further. A source close to the king reportedly indicated that Charles wanted the July meeting, but was adamant that it remain private. And that tells us something important. The king may be willing to rebuild, but he appears to want that rebuilding to happen carefully, quietly. and on terms that protect the relationship from becoming another public controversy. Harry's bigger problem: returning to Britain. There's another factor making this story much more complicated: Harry's relationship with Britain itself. The Duke of Sussex continues to have strong connections to the United Kingdom. His family is there. His father is there. His brother is there. His childhood memories are there. And the Invictus Games remain deeply connected to his public work. But returning to Britain has also become complicated because of security. Harry has repeatedly expressed concerns about the security arrangements available to him and his family. Earlier reporting showed that King Charles had offered royal accommodation for a future UK visit. But Harry and Meghan had not accepted that offer, with Harry's representatives emphasizing that accommodation was not the central issue. Their focus was security. Harry has argued that appropriate protection is necessary if Meghan and the children are going to travel with him. And this is where the emotional story meets a very practical problem. Harry may want to see his father. He may want Archie and Lilibet to spend more time with their grandfather. But bringing the entire family to Britain requires more than simply arranging a room. It requires a security plan that Harry considers adequate. And until that issue is resolved, every future family reunion comes with complications. The children may be the biggest motivation. Perhaps the most important part of this story is not Harry himself. It may be his children. Archie and Lilibet have had very limited opportunities to spend time with their royal relatives in Britain. And for Harry, allowing them to develop a relationship with their grandfather could be increasingly important. The July meeting at Highgrove therefore had significance beyond Harry and Charles. It created an opportunity for the next generation to reconnect with the family. And that could become one of the strongest reasons for Harry to continue trying. Because unlike the arguments of the past, this is no longer simply about what happened between two adult brothers or between a father and his son. It is also about grandchildren. King Charles is not only Harry's father. He is Archie and Lilibet's grandfather. And as the children grow older, the question of how closely they remain connected to their British family becomes increasingly important. For Harry, rebuilding that relationship could therefore be deeply personal. But there is still one wall Harry has not broken. King Charles is not the only member of the royal family who matters here. There is another relationship that remains dramatically different: Prince William and Prince Harry. And according to recent reports, there are still no clear signs of a reconciliation between the brothers. This is crucial. Because even if Harry and Charles succeed in rebuilding their relationship, that does not automatically mean the Sussexes are returning to a united royal family. The situation between William and Harry remains much more complicated. Recent reporting has described the brothers' relationship as deeply broken, with little or no contact. And that creates an extraordinary situation. Harry could potentially become closer to his father while remaining distant from his brother. Charles could rebuild a relationship with his youngest son while William remains cautious. The royal family could therefore find itself in a new and delicate balance. Not full reconciliation. Not complete estrangement. But something in between. A gradual rebuilding of one relationship at a time. Why a public appearance with Charles would be so significant? This brings us back to the headline. Prince Harry allegedly wants to be seen with King Charles. If that eventually happens, the significance would extend far beyond the photograph itself. Imagine Harry standing beside his father at a public event. No dramatic announcement. No explanation. Just father and son appearing together. The image would immediately dominate headlines around the world. It would be interpreted as evidence that something has changed. And perhaps that is why privacy matters so much right now. If reconciliation is genuinely taking place, the family may want the relationship to become strong before exposing it to the enormous pressure of public attention. The first step may not be a royal balcony. It may not be a major ceremony. It may simply be another private meeting. Then another. And eventually, perhaps, a public appearance. In that sense, the most powerful photograph could be the one that nobody is expecting. Because it would not need an explanation. The image itself would tell the story. The Invictus Games could become a major test. There is another important date on the horizon. The 2027 Invictus Games are scheduled to take place in Birmingham. And that event could potentially create another opportunity for Harry and the royal family to appear in the same environment. Recent reporting has suggested there is a possibility King Charles could attend in support of his son. But getting Prince William there would reportedly be considerably more difficult. And that distinction is fascinating, because the Invictus Games were created by Harry as one of the defining projects of his post-royal life. If Charles were to attend, it could represent a powerful gesture of support. If William were also present, the symbolism would be enormous. Father. 2 sons. 1 public event. A family that has spent years divided standing in the same place. But the scenario remains far from guaranteed. And that is exactly why the coming months could be so interesting. What does King Charles really want? Perhaps the biggest unanswered question is the king's position. Does Charles want Harry back in his life? The evidence increasingly suggests that he is at least willing to maintain contact. The July meeting happened. Charles reportedly wanted that meeting. And the relationship appears to be moving, however cautiously, in a more positive direction. But there is a difference between welcoming your son privately and rebuilding a public relationship with him. The king has responsibilities that go far beyond his personal emotions. Every decision involving Harry has consequences for the monarchy, for William, for the wider royal family, and for the institution Charles represents. That means the king cannot simply forget everything that happened. Nor can Harry. Years of conflict do not disappear because of one positive meeting. Trust takes time. And the latest reports suggest that both sides understand this. The relationship may be improving, but it remains fragile. The real story behind the headline: so, is Prince Harry really desperate to be seen with King Charles? Perhaps that word tells us more about the way the story is being presented than about Harry's actual feelings. What we can say with greater confidence is this: Harry appears determined to rebuild his relationship with his father. He appears interested in spending more time in Britain. He wants his children to have a stronger relationship with their grandfather. And after the July meeting of Highgrove, reports indicate that he wants to continue moving forward rather than reopening old wounds. That is significant. Because after years in which the Sussex story was dominated by conflict, criticism and distance, the narrative now appears to be changing. The question is no longer simply, will Harry reconcile with his family? It is becoming, how far can this reconciliation actually go? The next chapter from now, the answer remains uncertain. There are still major obstacles. Security concerns remain. Trust remains fragile. The relationship with William appears unresolved. And the royal family is unlikely to rush into a dramatic public reconciliation. But something has changed. Harry and Charles have met. They have spoken privately. The meeting reportedly left Harry encouraged. And now, according to new reporting, Harry wants to keep that momentum alive. That could eventually lead to more private family meetings. It could lead to Harry spending more time in Britain. It could allow Archie and Lilibet to build a closer relationship with their grandfather. And perhaps, one day, it could lead to something the world has been waiting to see for years: King Charles and Prince Harry standing together in public. Not as a carefully staged royal spectacle, but simply as a father and his son. And if that moment ever arrives, the world will not only be watching the photograph, it will be asking what happened behind it. Because after everything that has happened between Harry and the royal family, a single public appearance could become one of the most powerful symbols of reconciliation the monarchy has seen in years. For now, however, the door appears to be open. The question is whether Harry and Charles can walk through it without allowing the past to close it again. Music rises, fade out. This is Royal Inside.